salmon farming stories for you.
Okay. There was 2 articles in the Bangor Daily today about, one about how the salmon are increasing in the Penobscot River.
Yes.
They're still below what used to come before they took the big dams out. Then another was about escaping fish farm fish.
Oh,
Up in Canada, they captured some of them.
set it back where they belong. Then there was another one that said, within the last week or so, Press Herald article, that the total rebound of Atlantic salmon, not just the Penobscot, all of those.
Yeah. I mean, even now the Penobscot is like twice what it was a couple of years ago, but not many.
Since the first one of the president.
Right. I still remember that. In fact, I had a client who caught the first.
I think
Salmon.
generally the numbers.
He was called Salmon Bill.
I also.
He used to, he'd camp out along the shores of the Penobscot all summer,
So.
drink himself to death of fish when he
Okay.
could do it. And then in the winter, he'd spend in some of the shelters, but we would have him as a client occasionally. And he caught the first salmon, and he got to go down to Washington.
For which president?
First Bush, I think.
HW?
Yeah.
Just one question about the salmon. Isn't one of the biggest tolls on the salmon the commercial fisheries and the fact that they found where they all spend the winter?
Well, there's not supposed to be commercial fisheries for salmon. The only commercial fishery for salmon is Greenland. And they pulled out of the European Union because of the fishing regulations some years ago. But they still have a commercial salmon fishing industry, both to feed the people in Greenland and for international sale. I think that's the only commercial one. There's bycatch.
Yes, okay, no, it's not a touch.
And where they go is changing
Yeah, you just need to.
somewhat with the warming of the
Yes.
oceans and all that.
Right.
It's just so that people understand that it's being.
Oh,
recorded,
okay,
so
I
they
didn't
watch what they
see.
say, I guess,
No,
yes,
I
they're
didn't.
right, yeah, so maybe just put that in.
Didn't look hard enough. Sorry about that.
Okay,
Thank you.
The commercial fishermen 30 years ago found the place off Greenland.
They probably did, and then they shut down because everywhere is threatened on the salmon. I mean, there's salmon coming back to the northern European rivers and Canadian rivers, but they're not. It's not the quantities anywhere near the quantities. Hi, I'm Chad. I'm a researcher for.
How are you?
I've seen you in the Seattle report videos.
Oh, yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, those were shot on my front porch.
Oh, yeah.
I keep trying to fix it. I tried last April, I tried.
Like poor Paul T-Bag, he's trying to get it.
I don't drink as much as I used to, that's for sure.
I'm up to
No, me
my,
either. But
my,
2 cups a day is like a minimum.
I don't drink.
so
I say quart, but it's not.
that's good. How are things
Yeah.
going?
That's not, excuse me, that's not administered at all, that's part of the state university.
You mentioned.
It's a complete separate, I mean, it's
Otherwise,
the
it'd be-
third,
Otherwise,
it's the third institution that makes.
I have 2
public
cups.
higher
I get the bigger one in the morning and
The other two
one.
being,
I usually.
The
So
college
that's
system
about 39.
and the university main system. And us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is Rachel in the room?
I still.
Yes.
Good coffee.
Yes.
yes, she is in
Right.
the room.
I don't know.
Right.
Okay, and everyone is aware that it is live streaming now. Correct?
Is Newell there?
Newell's making coffee.
Oh, okay. I just,
Trying to.
I thought maybe just say something to now that we're live streamed to the public that we're.
Oh, sorry.
I have no secret.
Where's our camera?
Yeah. I've forgotten all my secrets.
Up there, you can see that
Oh.
screen up on this, that's what they see of us.
Well, welcome everyone to the MITSC meeting in September here, and we'll get started in just a second, I guess.
What was that?
Newell, I'll take one cream in my coffee.
Thank you. Yes, we'll be like 4 minutes before it's brewed.
Okay. It's
Yeah,
still
right.
still 8 a.m. out here, so you know, it's still coffee in it.
Oh, you got up early.
Mhm.
So who do we have? Are we all set, Paul?
Yeah, whenever,
Okay.
whenever you want to go.
All right, so before we get started, I just want to have a little moment of acknowledgement for our creator. And if you're able to stand, please do. Uliwan nikijini waskaman, kamilin and apch, emkis ka pamausawakan, aga kamilin and eduji wuli nagwak, ewi gotiegyod, eliwita zikskit kame. Uju kamine nikijini waskaman, sirwen gizalmanen, nakatukweji, Nimikwidahama nugana, ikani yaulu ditit, Lewan nikijini waskamantaho. Yes, so part of our welcome is welcome everybody to the MITSC meeting here today. And my name is Newell Louis. Louis Newell Louis. That's good to look at now. Balastic where we know. New Jay Auzibai, Mirak Mugug Nugget, a good cook. I'm gonna pass it to Bob.
Hello, I'm Bob Checkaway. I'm one of the state members and I come from Freeport.
Good morning, I'm Richard Rosen. I'm a state commissioner and I live in Bucksport.
I'm Rachel Bell. I'm the projects coordinator with MITSC and I live in Cobscook area.
I'm Judd S. Kendall. I'm a researcher and writer for MITSC on contract. I'm from Glenbury.
Would anyone like an agenda?
We'll go up to the screen. Paul?
Good morning, I'm Paul Tebow, the current managing director for the commission.
You want to pass it on, Paul?
Oh, sorry, Bert? Is Bert there? Zeke?
Morning, everyone. Neil Lewis, Zeke McDonald, Ola Stukwe now, Nujaya Madax Negiag, Naga Walamaguruk. My name is Zeke McDonald. I'm the commissioner for the Holton Valley Mounted Indians. And Darren, hand it off to you.
Thanks, Zeke. Darren Ranko, I'm a commissioner for the Penobscot Nation, and I will hand it off to Joey.
Thank you. Joey Barnes, representing Indian Township Passamaquoddy Tribe. This is Sandy.
Morning, everyone. Sandy Yarmul, Passamaquoddy Tribe at Zibayik, and I am the second commissioner for Passamaquoddy. And I will pass it to admin.
Good morning. I'm Pat Maller, I'm finance consultant for MITSC, and I'm here on campus today at Cobscook Institute. I have an office here. I live in Trescott. I will pass it on to Bert. Bert here.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm Bert Polchis. I am the other commissioner appointed by the Penobscot Nation. Welcome to everyone.
welcome. We also have some guests with
I
us
think
as
you need,
well.
I think you have Sam.
Sam,
Oh, sorry, Sam.
Hey, it's Sam St. John, Commissioner from the Holton Band of Mouse Eat Indians.
Thanks, Sam.
Mm.
So it looks like we do have a quorum.
Yes.
Disregard my earlier statement. And we also have some community members as well. If they want to introduce themselves, that's great.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Katie Donlin. Originally, I'm from Portland. Currently, I'm a grad student at University of Colorado, and I'm studying tribal state relations. So I thought I'd be here and learn from you all. So I'm happy to be here. I attended the live stream in the past, but I thought I'd make the drive up.
Thank you.
Brian Colleran from Speaker Rachel Talbot Ross's office. Good to see you all.
Welcome, Brian.
And
Right.
you are all welcome to just sit at the table.
I never
Wherever you're
imposed,
comfortable.
so thank you.
Wait. Do we have someone else up there? Carol?
Carol is from the Mitchell Center of Monitoring.
Oh, sorry.
Just to
Okay.
make sure there's no tech issues.
Anyone else? That's it? So we'll have a review of the agenda. Did it look okay to all of the commissioners here that are present? Any additions, Paul, Rachel?
I would just point out that the last item there is executive session. Just want to get you all to confirm that that's what you want to do is at the end, close out the live stream and go to executive session. That's what you've done in the past. But
Yes, please. And no other comments on the agenda? We will follow it, I guess, Paul. And how about the minutes from the last meeting? Rachel,
No discussion.
any discussion? Comments?
Move to approve the minutes.
Do we all agree that they're okay? Any objections? No? Great. Good job. Rich. Okay, financial report. You're up.
I gotta mute for a minute. My dog just started barking.
Not a comment on flight.
I thought you were gonna say your dog ate the minute.
Sorry about that. Okay, financial report, as usual, it's sort of incorporated as the first part of the written staff report that was submitted. You have two reports for covering July and August. We combined them into one this time. And the expenditures during those 2 months are fairly typical, a little bit extra spent on printing because we have run into the need to spend some additional money on printing materials. And there was a relatively large claim on the health reimbursement arrangement because that varies depending on the time of year and when claims are submitted, but otherwise pretty typical spending level. As far as the funding, government funding, we have received part one. As you may recall, the state funding was done in two parts. So we've received the part one funding, which was basically the old base funding, which gives us adequate funds to continue operations for several months. And part two funds, which is the significant increase that we are receiving in state funding, that becomes available in October. So at that time, we'll make the request, and our statute allows us to get, all of our funding at one time rather than having it spread out over the year. So presumably we will have all of that state funding by sometime in October. And the total of our base funding from the state will now be $268,500, which is approximately 150% increase over the prior base funding. I do need to note that we still have some funding for fiscal year 23 that we haven't received. We have $5,000 of tribal funding that we still anticipate receiving that was for fiscal year 23, and requests have been made for those payments. The next item is the proposed budget, and I have to say it's been a challenge to get together the proposed budget in time for this meeting. It's why you don't actually have with you an actual draft of a proposed budget. There were a lot of variables that we had to take into account and just some scheduling issues. But as of this morning, we actually do have a draft budget, and which I haven't, I just got, and I wouldn't expect you to be able to review it immediately. But Pat is with us, and I've seen the proposed budget, and basically it takes into account that we will have more funding, so it increases the spending in some areas, because one of them is going to be that you'll go back to having a full-time executive director. So that's a significant increase over last year. But with the additional funding, there's also room, for some other things. So that proposed budget will include some additional money for the offsite contractors who work on projects, which was one of the goals of our proposal for the funding increase. Then it would also set aside some additional money for printing costs, because we've found this past year that because of new initiatives we've taken on, printing costs came with those. And in order to complete those projects, we really needed to, move some money and spend more money on printing. We hope going forward that we may have more success in getting outside funding to pay for printing. This year we did receive, we have just recently received that a donation from Hancock Lumber that did partially offset some of our printing costs for the C-Run report. What I did give you some notes that I drafted regarding variables that we've looked at in terms of drafting a budget. And there are several of them, beginning with the hiring of a new executive director. What I would ask you to do, what I propose we do at this point is that we can circulate the draft budget that we do now have. It projects funding at an increased level to $272,000 and something per year. But we have base funding now of $284,000, I think. So there is adequate funding for that proposal, and probably some leeway for us to make some increases in some of the spending areas. So we have one of the variables we have is that we may get additional funding from the tribes to correspond to the increase that we've received from the state according to the existing formula. So we may see some additional income. And the draft we've been working on so far, we have not assumed that we will receive additional grant funds, although we may well, MITSC in the course of the year may in fact succeed in getting some additional grant funds, but the draft budget will not project the receipt of new grant funds other than the donation from the Hancock Lumber for the printing. What I propose to do if it's all right with the commissioners, is that we take the draft that we have just recently been able to create, and we start using that as our, basic, very much a draft. And Pat has set it up so that we have a year-to-date, report that is based on that draft budget. And I would send that around for the commissioners now, and we would work with that as a draft. And then at the next meeting, whether that's a special meeting or whether it's the November meeting, we would have a revision of that based on some of the variables that will have been determined by then, and then propose that you act on the budget, or the new director probably at that point would be asking you to act on that draft budget, if that sounds acceptable to the commissioners.
Yes.
So I'd ask that you look at those variables that I sent in those notes, because I think it'll give you a better understanding of kind of the possibilities we're looking at, and why it's more than a little difficult right now to pin down the budget. But we do expect some of those things to be clarified before too long. I already mentioned that we have the significant increase in state funding, and we're approaching the tribes regarding a proportionate increase. If they made the proportionate increase that we're requesting, that would bring in approximately an additional $10,500 that we have not currently budgeted, but we are hopeful that we would have that additional income. So that is what I have for a financial report at this point, and see if I respond to any questions. And I particularly I guess I'm looking for, assent that we can use this draft budget for now. We'll send it around, and the next meeting would address a formal adoption of the budget.
Yeah, we do have a question, Paul.
I'm just asking just basic questions. So obviously we're talking about FY24, our fiscal year ends June 30, so we'll be, in a few weeks, we'll be a quarter into the current budget year that we're developing. I'm on the right year, correct?
That's correct. And
I think we can get out of the way maybe a few basic the basic understanding on the construct of the administrative side. So we're really looking at, if I understand it correctly, budget a full-time executive director position, budget the administrative support position. Is that full or part-time?
Full-time projects coordinator.
Projects coordinator. So full-time executive director, full-time project coordinator position. The PAT work that's contract work.
Correct.
Yes.
And that would continue, propose, I'm guessing the same.
Yes.
Yep. And so in the admin, sort of the operational piece, what's the other sort of big assumption that I think you probably have consensus on?
Well, in the draft budget, we would have an increased amount for off-site contractors who work on projects. I think the draft budget calls for that to be increased from 10,000 to 30,000. I think I got that right, Pat? So,
Yes.
and I think we may in fact be able to increase that a little more. Part of the proposal we made as part of the biennial budget process with the state and the tribes was that we wanted to have the flexibility of more money to use contractors who have a variety of expertise to work on various projects. The alternative would be to take that money and perhaps have an additional employee who's part-time, but our feeling all along has been that it gives us more flexibility to use that as contract money. Because if you look at the last few years, we've brought in people with various types of expertise to work on various things. And we'd like to have the flexibility to continue to do that.
So those four components that we just touched on, that pretty much, that's the construct of the administrative support piece that would be in the budget.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll move ahead if there aren't any other questions. The next item in our staff report is actually regarding the C-Run report. And I'm going to defer to Rachel because she is the one who has been really doing most of the work regarding C-Run.
Yeah, well, as Paul mentioned, we received outside funding from Hancock Lumber, a donation to help print another 100 copies of C-Run, which we will be bringing with us to the Common Ground Fair, where we're going to have a booth and a social and political action tent.
When is that? Sorry.
The 22nd, 23rd, and 4th of September. And I'm gonna make a plug to invite any commissioners to join us for any amount of time. The booth will be up. Bert came last year and it was great to have him. And Judd and Tony have agreed to do a speech. I think that will be in the political and action tent at 11 on Saturday. And Rafi Hopkins of Section Sign, who does a lot of work with us on website and video stuff, he's going to come and film that speech. So we'll be able to include that in our video series. And that's the other effort we've been making related to C-Run, is that we have been doing a series of interviews and recording them and then releasing those videos under the name MITSC Tributaries, beginning with an interview with Judd and Tony that's being released in brief segment videos. That's more digestible to most people.
You're up to number 3 now?
Yeah.
And when is that going to be?
The video,
Yes, I saw
when
it.
is the speech at the fair? Or
I saw something, I think you posted it on Facebook, the third piece of the interview with Tony and
it
Judd.
is up on the website.
It's already.
Yeah. Yeah. And you should be on our MailChimp list now. And so that will tell you too when something goes live on the website, and then we'll have a link to the website.
That's what I saw, thank you.
Yeah, so I believe we have one more segment of that video interview, and then we already have a whole other interview that we've done that we're gonna start releasing, and then we have another interview schedule that, or planned, we need to schedule it with Sam, actually, and the other staff at Holden Van Malice Natural Resources Department, talking about the work they're doing and how that intersects with C-Run. And then, yeah, we had our first C-Run related talk, fish talk, at Friday night of our retreat in July. That felt really successful because a lot of different groups were very interested in showing up and participating. We fed everyone, and then we had a discussion that felt like it was only the beginning. And I've since then been invited to participate with one of the groups that was present that night, called Living Tides. And I'll be meeting with them regularly, and they've offered to lend their support to organizing more of those scheduled dialogues, and then identifying ways that we could collaboratively take action on the recommendations in the C-Run report. So it feels like there's a lot of energy and momentum support there, and that's exciting. Judd?
And Tony has an article coming out, I believe, in October in Maine Policy Review.
Yes. Yep.
About the C-Run report.
Yep. And I'm gonna get you all a copy of that. It may still be edited a little bit. But Tony said there's maybe even still a window that could get feedback. Anything we wanted to say. So that's really exciting. I think that pretty much covers what's going on with C-Run right now. We will have it for sale at Common Ground, so we're trying to take the donation we got from Hancock lumber and be able to turn that into selling them, being able to print more. So.
Thanks, Rachel. Any questions about the status of the C-Run project? If not, I guess I would move on to the next piece of the staff report, which is state and federal legislative developments. Just to review, the Wabanaki Studies Bill that we've been actively collaborating on was carried over to the next session. A lot of progress was made on it at the last session, and we are hopeful that we'll see a Wabanaki Studies Bill emerging at the next session, and we assume that MITSC will continue to work collaboratively with other groups to make that happen. The new omnibus bill, the latest omnibus bill regarding implementation of the recommendations from the task force has been carried over. There will, and we'll be talking a lot more about that, I assume. There will be a statewide referendum on LD 78 that would restore the Article 10 language to the printed Maine Constitution. And that's farther down the agenda to talk about that. The staff is recommending that prior to the next session, MITSC conduct, analysis and attempt to develop consensus positions regarding the implementation of the task force recommendations. And Bob Checkaway has been working on development of a forum, either MITSC sponsored or co-sponsored with other organizations. And again, I think he'll be commenting on that further later in the meeting. So that's it on the legislative update, other than what we'll talk about in the course of the agenda. Any questions on that at this point? If not, I'll move on to the MITSC fishing rules and co-management of fisheries. Bob has continued to work on this, where he's taken the lead, and I can't remember. Did we have that as an agenda item or?
Yes.
Right, then later in the agenda, Bob will be providing an update on the status of that. Updated work plan, that is an agenda item. You recall we presented a draft updated report at the July meeting with the request that you be looking at that, with the idea that at this meeting you can enact a revised version of the work plan. That's an agenda item. State vacancies on the commission. We still have 4 vacancies. No nominations yet, but the latest information from the governor's office has been that they are actively working on it, expecting to have nominations in time for the Judiciary Committee to hold confirmation hearings this fall. So hopefully, before the end of this calendar year, we're going to have a full state side of the commission. The next item on the report is outreach, and again, I would defer to Rachel to summarize that, because she's been doing almost all of that. So.
What was the next, what was?
Outreach.
Outreach. Oh, okay. I guess that's my. Yeah, outreach. I was honored to be able to participate in the Passamaquoddy Ancestors Paddle again this year. Brian was on it as well. That's just an amazing experience. So yeah, that was wonderful. And then spent time at the Passamaquoddy Days events. Saw Chief Peter Paul, and he encouraged me to come up to the Mi'kmaq Maui Yami, and so I went up north for that event. Yeah, and then Bert actually made the suggestion that it might be beneficial for MITSC to show up at some of these events with a booth, similar to being at Common Ground. So we've actually organized a plan to be at Indian Township's upcoming event on the 17th of September with a MITSC booth and all of the information that we'll have, same stuff at Common Ground. So I think the intention would be, with everyone's blessing, to try to do that at all of the tribal community events. If that's wanted, I'm available to do it. And I think that pretty much covers it. I did get to visit with Sam when I was up north. Fulton MITSC Natural Resource Department, and looking forward to going back up again to do more of this video work. But things have been busy.
Bert has a
Yeah.
question.
Yes, Bert?
I don't have a question. That's just gonna, reinforcing, that I think the conversation you and I had, Rachel, about, which, is why you have that booth at Indian Township.
Yeah.
I think that, it would be really good, and of course, before the meeting, there was a little bit in the conversation, the fact that we should, the outreach, between MITSC and the tribes. This would go forth. Something that was brought up was, there were several people that don't know what MITSC is all about. And the sad part is that it's also amongst our tribal citizenship. Whichever community we're from, a large majority of our tribal citizenship don't even know, they might have heard of them. They don't have a clue what MITSC is all about. Sometimes they confuse it with other organizations, and sometimes that's not very good when they confuse it with that. But so I think that it's important that we start making a push to actually go into the communities during our the individual celebrations, whether it's Madakmiguk, Zibaig, Bunwabskeg, or Maliseet territory, or even Aroostook Band of Mi'kmaq, just to be able to be there. And I think it would be good for the appropriate commissioners to be there as well. If it's your community, we should be there. And to me, all of them are my community. So, but anyway, that way we can be there for the tribal citizenship who would like answers. You would like to know what MITSC is all about. And in the future, those same people, as they grow up or they move on in life, when it comes time that we need to fill the vacancies from our tribal commissioners, it wouldn't be so hard to find somebody, somebody that knows something. And anyway, I just thought I'd add that, Rachel. I appreciate, all the efforts you do. Willie one?
Willie one, Bert. And it
Zeke
looks like
has his hand up.
Zeke has his-
Hey everyone, I just want to let everyone know that our community day is tomorrow. Formerly known as Recognition Day, we decided to change the name so it's to incorporate our traditional name and language, MITSC, so MITSC Community Day, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. tomorrow, and everyone's invited. Cool. That's all I want to say.
If there aren't any other comments or questions regarding the outreach efforts, the next item briefly on the staff report is just the MITSC website and library. This is an ongoing project that we've been able to do largely because of the grant, the second grant we received from the Broadreach Fund. So we continue to work on the website, improving it, and the library, that's an ongoing effort to expand and reorganize the website library. One specific thing I want to bring up again, we would like to have a Wabanaki contractor, participating in the expansion of the library. So if there's if you all know of someone who might be, a good choice for that, to work with us on expanding more of the tribal, documents, tribal content that we could incorporate into our library, I would ask you to, pass that on to us. So that's what I have on the library. Next item on the staff report is a meeting with the tribal chiefs. We have been trying for a while to get a meeting with all of the chiefs. During the legislative session, I think it was quite a challenge with the time that they were spending on other things. But at this point, we're again hoping that before too long we could have a meeting with all of the chiefs. We can try to reach out to the chiefs individually, but there are some things I think that we really need to have a joint meeting with the chiefs in order to be able to address. There are several things that have been just pending that we would like to have input from the chiefs on and have a response from the chiefs on. One of them is the increased tribal funding to correspond to the state increase. But there are other issues that have been pending, including the training for state employees regarding the new collaboration statute, and several other issues that have just come up where we really would benefit from having sort of some joint input from the chiefs. And I also think it would just be really good at this point, because it's been a while since MITSC has had a joint meeting with the chiefs. You may recall a whole year ago, we tried to have a joint meeting in connection with our annual retreat, and we were planning to have a joint session with the chiefs, but because of scheduling problems, that never worked out. And ever since then, we've been really trying to pull together a joint meeting with the chiefs. So any help that the tribal commission members can provide in terms of facilitating that, we would really appreciate that, so that we could have that meeting with the chiefs.
Paul, just to follow up on that a little bit, Nate, you just said it right, that each of the tribal commissioners in those communities could help us, excuse me, they could help us to facilitate that process, right? And I think part of, even for Rachel's benefit as well, if we had a one-page document that kind of outlined what MITSC is charged to do, or what MITSC can do or would do, for all of us basically to carry around, right? And because we don't always remember, or I should speak for myself, I guess, I don't always remember what I'm supposed to do or say. So sometimes that's a little bit easier to approach, like a tribal chief or a council member, to say, listen, we'd like to have a meeting, regarding MITSC and our relationship, et cetera, and not necessarily in those words, but a way to, to make that a little bit easier to transition to. And then, and part of that would also include another page that basically outlines, what are the needs of that particular community, or that particular tribal entity.
Yeah, I think we could put something like that together. I think a lot of the content of that we could actually draw from existing documents from the website. And we could put together in one place the sort of the pending issues that we want to, address with the joint meeting of the chiefs. And Newell, I guess it would be really helpful if you were willing to then, as chair, to send a joint communication, to all the chiefs.
And I would also accompany the commissioner if they would like as well.
Yeah, and it would also be a way for with a new director coming in, it would be a great opportunity for the new director to connect with, well, I think our new director is probably already going to know the chiefs, but it would be a good opportunity for the new director to make that connection with all of the chiefs. So I could follow up with you, Newell, on that after,
I can do, and we have a beautiful new brochure coming out, so share that. And I noticed it looks like Zeke and Joey.
But yeah, so we can follow up. And in the meantime, I would just, again, reinforce what Newell said, that it would be helpful if the tribal commissioners could, put a bug in the ear of the chiefs about pulling together a joint meeting with us.
We have a couple comments. Paul,
Yep.
go ahead, Joe.
I think it'd be great if somebody gave us some dates. I mean, I can go to the chief and say you want to meet, but if you want to meet with the chief in township, you just give me an idea when you want to meet with them, or do you want to set up a meeting with all of them? That's virtually impossible, as most of you know.
Yeah.
I spent a little time down in Augusta, and some could be there and some couldn't. So if you're going to meet individually with chiefs, then Rachel or whoever wants to let me know, I could say this is a time frame you want to meet. We can put something together, but I'm not sure what else you want us to do.
Well, if I could, I think Zeke also has a comment.
I just have something slightly off topic, actually. So I don't want
to. Okay, maybe I should respond first to Joey's comment. We have been trying to get a joint meeting because, I mean, we understood that the chiefs do have, regular joint meetings, and we were just trying to get on their agenda basically for a meeting that they would already have, and we would be part of that agenda. That we weren't seeking a completely separate, gathering of the chiefs. I personally don't think that individual meetings with the chiefs, while valuable each of them in themselves, are not a substitute for also having a joint meeting, because there are some issues where I think the chiefs need to, be talking to each other and us, and in order to make some decisions, particularly regarding the increase in funding, how to do the training for state employees. I think it's going to be really hard to get a resolution on those kinds of things without a joint conversation with the chiefs.
Paul, so I can help a little bit, provide some information. So the chiefs were having a weekly meeting during the legislative session. Chiefs and the representatives from each of the different communities, and those stopped, and we haven't resumed them just yet, but yeah, there could be an avenue there.
All right, that's helpful to know that is the situation now. So I guess we maybe need to readjust our thinking.
So Paul, I agree with you in that, we need to have that joint meeting as well, but I think, if we're going to take these steps or to rectify how we've not been, or how I've not been meeting with the chiefs, right? I think if we meet with them individually as well, just to start talking, right? But if they can only do it, one at a time, then we should probably accommodate that as well. And then at that meeting, we can stress how important it is to bring us all together.
Yeah, we can follow up on that. It would be basically a continuation of the listening tour we started to do last winter, I guess it was. We met with, I think, 2 of the chiefs during that time, but we never did get individual meetings with all of the chiefs. Yeah, we can approach it that way. I do think there are some issues where we aren't going to really get a resolution unless we have a joint conversation with chiefs. But having the individual meetings may help us get there. So, yeah.
And I know in the past, MITSC has also done meetings in the communities as well. And I think if we started to reinstitute that, that would be very helpful to tribal citizens from those communities to say, oh yeah, MITSC is here.
Right, and that is, just to review that, I mean, that is the plan that the commission made earlier this year, to start again with the rotation.
Yeah.
We were thinking in terms of, having the meetings in the counties where the tribal communities are, which is, Penobscot, Aroostook, and Washington, and rotating the meetings. The first of those was going to be up at Holton Band, but for reasons that came up at the time, we weren't able to do that, and then we had the retreat in the summer, and now we made the decision to bring this meeting here for a variety of reasons, including the interviews with the executive director candidates. But I think we should return to that plan to rotate the meetings into the areas that are, the tribal areas. I guess that's one of the things on the agenda is to talk about the November meeting and because we haven't set a location for it yet. So, but I'm glad you brought that back up, Noel, because that was the intention, to return to rotating the meetings in terms of the location. So,
Yeah, it gives us visibility.
and I think
So
Zeke.
Robert has a comment as well.
Okay.
Only if you're done, Paul.
No, yeah, go ahead.
And following that up, as for the listening tour, the original idea was to put a small task force together, I guess with me, Zeke, Rachel, and Paul. And we were going to do that during the lull in the legislative session. Unfortunately, that on the ramp and towards planning, that we were only able to squeeze in one such listening tour meeting with Chief Newell. That was the four of us, Zeke, me, Rachel, and Paul. And I don't know how valuable Chief Newell found that, but I found it immensely valuable, even enjoyable. And Zeke, if you're still willing, and Rachel, to keep doing that. I know we don't have much time for the next session with your team, but I would be delighted to keep knocking those off one at a time. The idea just so that the tribal leaders are aware that there are people at MITSC, even if we don't have a full staff and struggle to reach a quorum, and start talking. Zeke, are you still available?
Sure, and I think Sandy says that if you're within a community that the commissioner should be invited as well, which I would agree with as well. Something I was going to mention earlier that might as well just I don't want to change the topic, but the Wabanaki Alliance is hosting what they're calling a retreat next Tuesday, and if anyone's interested in going to that, it's down at the University of Maine in Orono. It's just going to be a bunch of presentations. I know a couple of the chiefs will be there as well. Just let me know and I can send you the, you got to register beforehand, but I can send you that. But yeah, if anyone cares to come.
Send that to me, will you please, Zeke?
And I'll be there, Zeke. I'll see you there.
All right, sounds good.
There's also food has arrived. I don't know when, like if there's a point that it's natural to take a break and have people bring food to the table. I'm just asking us here.
Rachel, there's two brief items left on the staff report, and then that might be a good place to take the break.
Sounds good.
Okay. So the next item was executive director interviews and transition planning. We held interviews earlier today. And the staff is recommending that you all do some planning for, a transition period. We don't know yet when, like a start date would be for the new director, but it does seem like it would be appropriate to have, some kind of a transition plan in place. And I have stated that I can continue to do some part-time work through a transition period to help the new executive director if the commissioners want me to do that. I would note that when I came in as a director, John Diefenbacher-Kroll offered to do that. And, for a couple of months, it was extremely helpful to me because John had been the director for a long time. And he was the only staff member. And so having input and help from John during his transition was, like I say, very, very helpful to me. So, just suggest that, it's on the agenda to, one of the agenda items is, planning for transition. So we'll get to that later, I guess. And then I mentioned the November meeting. I don't know if maybe it isn't an agenda item. I may have been wrong about that, but the November meeting was scheduled previously, like the others, for the second Friday of November, November 10th. So as things stand, the next meeting of the commission is planned to be Friday, November 10th, but the location has not yet been determined. So if I neglected to put that on the agenda, I would suggest that you make that an additional agenda item to make sure you address before the end of the day.
Yeah, we should have that as an agenda item,
Okay.
I'll fix that.
Paul. I think that's gonna be a holiday, right?
So that's the staff report. If there aren't any other questions, maybe it's a good time to grab some food there.
Is the live stream?
I think Sandy may have a question.
Yes.
Well, it's not necessarily a question. It's more of a suggestion that I put in the chat, but for the benefit of the people who are there in person, which I forgot, I apologize. I suggested that we should have scheduled consultation sessions with tribal leaderships, and they should be done at least twice per year, and that it should be consistent. And I put in, i.e. April and October. I mean, obviously we're going to have to look at the USET schedule, but I think that engaging with tribal leaderships to talk to them about what we're doing and then to hear from them what they want us to do. I think that sets a precedent that we could then have our friends on the state level start to acknowledge, because I think that, there are so many things that are done without consultation of the tribes and their leadership. And so if we can maybe set a precedent here that this is how we as MITSC will be working, because it shows reverence to tribal leaderships, and it's an appropriate thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Yeah, we've got a statute on collaboration now. We should do some of that.
So we're gonna take a little break to get some food. Come right back, right? Okay.
So if anybody's on the live stream, we're taking a break here, but we'll be back.
We have fresh coffee as well, Darren.
This is Pat. I'm going to sign off.
Oh,
This
thank you,
point.
Pat.
Okay.
Thanks, Pat. Night, Pat.
Nice seeing all of you today. And thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
Take care.
Roast beef, I think this is vegetarian and this is turkey. I'm pretty sure. I think it's like roast beef.
You got any joint problems?
Mozzarella cheese, and then turkey. I don't know if any points.
Here.
I have a mind.
I think I've seen you.
There's
I think
pigs
I heard.
in Zoom.
Yeah, I'm one of the first.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
No, it's just
Nice.
been in touch with someone.
Yes, I'm from Portland originally. I oh my gosh, well, it's 50 years.
Oh, yeah.
You're both
Yeah, thank you.
When she walked in, she was just. Assistant General Kim.
I know, I was confused about what you're myself.
Thank you, because I sent a message to like a couple people. Like, I don't know.
And probably
Pretty
you
General
would know.
Pat Ward, Pretty General Pat
Oh,
Ward
you
is
look
here.
like you do. I don't.
You look-
She has
yeah,
come
she-
to our
she's-
meetings before.
Oh, she has?
Yeah, I don't think I know what
Yes,
she looks like.
I just get Roger.
All right, I am very happy. It doesn't make me look like a goof.
Oh, now you look.
And I said, gee, I'm not just to see Kim
We're
Atwater
not sure either.
dressed as Karen.
Yeah, so the Assistant Attorney General who focuses on tribal affairs.
Okay.
This regional
That's
process is
can hire out
just
your
like.
body double.
I'll dive in. whatever.
Secretly identified now.
Yeah. So I looked at you earlier, like. with
No, it's okay. I
some
like-
extreme suspicion.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to get away from the office, like this needs my phone straight down.
The live stream is still on.
Harvest Moon. Good guess.
Huh, no,
Paper towel?
well, let me see. Yeah, that's not- Yeah, I'm sorry, I guess we don't have any.
Just play
Oh,
that.
yeah, there's
Okay,
plenty.
okay.
Yeah, I think there's like the perfect number actually, for the
Okay.
first time
Awesome.
ever.
Down
ever.
there in Crumpet. Down in Bucksport, you know that little coffee place?
Oh, yeah. You play?
They're doing music, yeah.
Oh,
Doing
wonderful.
music and other performances, becoming a big,
They're doing a nice job.
yes, they brought quite a few people. There's a really good community space.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Oh,
cool.
that's wonderful.
I wanna check that out.
Yeah. Good.
What's it called? The Crumpet.
Rachel, what does olive mean?
It's like a turkey, is that what you got?
No, I grabbed it.
Oh, okay, I think it's a turkey something. or other.
Remember, I got it.
Now, there's an old saying, like law, it's like sausage, you shouldn't speak. Same sense, you like state tribal law, you shouldn't speak. Your clinical experience. Imagine.
I wrote it down. But I'm ready to do whatever use I can be. Information sources, things.
Excellent, thank you.
Legislature.
January.
Trying to be careful.
You're looking for a specific date in January or just? That might be, there's gonna be like commission, it's just interim work for committee study groups.
We use the rest of the listening tour in January. The reason the idea of the listening tour appealed to me, because again, I didn't realize it was impossible to schedule this many people.
Let's make sure to follow up with each other about that. And just start.
Yeah, I got jealous when you said that you, would you remember Peter Paul?
I just bumped into him.
No. Did you have, did you meet any chiefs?
I mean, I had met with him before. I've gone north to Chief Savannah's. Yeah, so I feel like I've met with all the chiefs at this point and had a great visit too with Vice Chief Silverboy. Got to make a basket.
Did you go up to Maui?
I did.
How was it?
It was beautiful. Yeah, it's just neat to see how different each celebration is.
We had sort of an ad hoc listening tour of Chief McConnell.
Right?
Mhm. God, it's great. I think boundaries of the state, just the prime, but they're connected.
Newell, I don't know if it's on the agenda, but with Brian here, it would be nice to just hear a report from Brian.
Yeah.
See if there's any.
We'll move that in.
I mean, I definitely don't want to put you on the spot. If you have anything to share, I just want to make sure there's space for you to share.
Okay. Yeah.
Legislature's back in this one.
Need this, that's right.
That's sort of different life under its.
It's tough to get work done. But it's just so many different demands of time and meetings. Work that you're assigned to do. I don't take a backseat to anything immediate. And, in addition to our regular roles in the speaker's office, things that are to do with the staff, different committees. So like I staff like all of them. Resource, but also judiciary and criminal justice. So it's like it's a lot. When everybody will sit down, research, read those 200-page reports that people put out. Very exciting about possibly having nominations for the fall.
Yeah, that's gonna be so exciting.
I'm telling people now, and including tribal leaders. Suggestions. Remember, by all means, speak up.
Especially representing counties like Riverside and Washington County. I just don't know that. I should be asking them to stay on. it's a little mysterious. I mean, we make suggestions and then. Here's napkins.
Oh, thank you.
Judiciary legislative.
Right.
Do you have an organization at all analogous to this in Colorado?
Colorado does have an office of tribal state affairs. Yes. That the, I believe, Lieutenant Governor actually heads up. And it's a staff commission with, you know, executive director, analysts, and administrative staff. And they do a lot of outreach with regular meetings. A lot of recommendations, policy recommendations. So like someone, it's totally unique with,
As far as I can tell, it is.
Yeah.
The Colorado system is a state-funded, state-appointed agency, right?
yeah,
So it's not like
it's in the governor's
Intergovernment.
yeah, there's several different ways to do it. A joint decision. Usually a lot more government administrative action, day-to-day stuff for outreach to the tribal nations. That usually like that's like their job is to, you know, constantly station, figuring out whatever government programs that promotion. Yeah, sure. Economic development. Yeah. That does not exist.
Officially overcapping.
Oh, I would even on that, Barry.
Where is it? What's he doing?
Any states
Still in it.
rank me dead last. And promotion in Indiana.
Talks about it.
Yeah.
You'll be
Yeah.
retired.
Which is surprising considering
Every time I see
major element state income overall.
Absolutely.
going out to national.
Definitely something that's kind of not invested enough.
Still leaning to the right.
Yeah.
Right, are you sore at all battling?
So like the next day I got back, I had to go and get on a flight from Boston to Indianapolis for a conference. And like 2 days in, it's like when all of my sunburn, like right.
Oh, yeah, my skin. My lips like swell.
Yeah. And like I got like an award. So I was, like, all these pictures.
That's great. I still have like a weird tan line.
Yeah, my hands are still a little bit whiter than my arms from the gloves.
I've gone through a couple of dogs.
It's a lot of fun though.
Yeah, it was. Are you gonna do it next year?
He's got a cool
Yeah,
dog.
yeah.
Rufus is the name. On a black line. Maybe a little mix, but
So the first day was hot and sunny and some folks got very sunburned. Right. Oh yeah, I'm so, just to warn everyone, I have this cord.
Oh, yeah.
You have
It's
one
like
now.
a horrible.
Sorry.
Sorry. But then, yeah, the next day we like woke up in a tent under heavy storms and we weren't sure if we were gonna be going. So it's like, then it really cleared out. Like by the time we started paddling, it stopped raining. And then it like totally cleared. It became sunny. I didn't see a shark this year. I was hoping to.
That was a shark.
I'm sure I saw a shark a year ago.
Where?
I'm sure that I saw a great white shark right off Savaic. I've
Like
looked
it's
at
part of the
pictures of
estuary.
fins and like compared them, and I feel like it's looked exactly like a great white shark fin. And we know they're there.
Yeah, there's one that was eating a whale.
Right, and then someone out on a fishing boat or something took that whole video of a shark, a great white. And then they do get tamed too. The ones that get-
We spotted them in the estuary. I don't know.
Really? That's what freaks me out, to think they come in like that. And then I'm like, is it really safe to swim?
I mean, why wouldn't they?
Yeah, why would they?
There's food in there.
Wow. Yeah, I had just gotten a wetsuit a couple years ago to do oceans swimming, long distance swimming. Just to
Look
find-
like a seal.
So you look like a seal.
And then, yeah, then I was just, I feel like right after that, and I was getting so into it. And now I'm too paranoid to swim. Because you do look like a seal.
Yeah, they keep saying, oh, it's more likely that you'll be struck by lightning than attacked by a great white shark. Yeah, but I make a point of not standing under tall metallic structures.
Exactly, yeah, like to put yourself out in the water with a bunch of seals, when you know there's sharks around, and looking like a seal. I was wondering if I could like paint some kind of pattern on my wetsuit.
Not a seal.
Yeah,
Right.
Maybe a giant eye, so I look even bigger than the shark.
Did you get lunch?
I do not, but I'm good. Thank you.
There's one left.
I thought I had to say.
Appreciate
So help me out on the dates here. The Hope Band has been tomorrow. I'm not gonna make that.
Yeah, sadly, I have a gig.
And then the 17th is Indian Days at
So that's, I think it's like, there's stuff happening Friday, Saturday and Sunday, but Sunday is maybe when a lot of the dancing is happening.
Yeah,
That's when I'm
It's
going.
grand entry. So,
Yeah,
This coming Sunday?
no, 7.
17, yeah.
and then the 20, the Common Ground Fair, 22nd, 3rd, and 4th.
Mhm. And if anyone wants to come to Common Ground and you want to get in a pass, to the fair, let me know. I mean, I only have so many, but if you're helping in the booth, then that's. Sure, they're passes.
The crowds have been so crazy
Yeah,
over the years. That fair.
I prefer having a job at that fair. It's like overwhelming. It's crazy. I love working. When did we say we were coming back?
I think we did.
Oh dear.
I think they're all anxiously waiting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm ready.
We're ready?
I had a question. I think I heard during the break there, suggestion that, that the commissioners invite Brian to, make some comments. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
If he wants to.
If he wants to, and I think it'd be a nice follow-up to the brief legislative summary that I gave in the staff report. So I would suggest that you kick off this part of the meeting by going ahead and asking Brian to, say what he'd like to say.
Sing us a song.
Just entertain you. I say.
Okay, we'll put that on the agenda as A-.
Yeah.
You are amenable to that?
Yeah, if you don't mind, let me just kind of pull up some
Special guest appearance.
just reference materials. I get my head together here. But I guess the first thing, is, we kind of mentioned the legislature's returning in January. Right now, legislature's in recess and just doing a few study commissions are happening. There may be few meetings of different legislative policy committees taking up any kind of work, whether it's accepting reports from different agencies, or if there are nominations to be considered, that could happen. And usually when there are nominations, like in the interim, you only need the Senate to go and confirm nominations. The House has no role. So it's actually a little bit expedited. The Senate will usually schedule 1 or 2 sessions, depending on how many nominations they have in front of them. So they can act a little bit quicker. So you don't have to, wait around until January for members to show up. So you might get it a little bit sooner, depending on when the Senate acts after it's taken action on the nomination. And then as far as individual bills, there are a number of bills that have been phrases carried over from one session to another. That's when either a policy committee decides to, just hold on the bill for that moment and pick it up next year, whether it's, discovered or the timing isn't right because it might be a report or some kind of meeting planned after legislative session is taking place, or there's just a lot to get their head around before they can go and take up new legislation or that legislation. Of course, the largest bill that is being carried over that has a lot of focus in the legislative session in the public is LD 2007, which is I use this phrase now that I came up with, legacy bills. One bill that goes from one session to another session to another session. This was originally LD 2094 and the 129th. And LD 1626, I think, in the 130th. It is kind of the continuation of that work of the task force on making recommendations for the Mayor Settlement Act from 2019. And that bill will be recommendations for that task force. Sans anything that's already been enacted in the law. There was some consultation and some tax provisions that were taken, were made into law from another bill, sports betting. Yeah, well, sports betting, but that wasn't an actual recommendation of the task force betting. And also some matters around clean drinking water. And so that's just going to be it's currently in concept draft form, so the language isn't public just yet, but the plan is to have that public draft prior to the January session.
Bill proposed by the speaker, or would it have the same sponsors?
Yeah, sponsorship doesn't change. So that is proposed by Speaker Talbot Ross. There are a few other bills. If anyone has questions, please stop. If you look for hands from me.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will.
There's a few other bills that are being carried over, providing Indigenous peoples access to state parks, set aside funds for federal block grants, which has to do with community services block grants. That's also another legacy bill from the past few legislatures. Expansion of the definition of offensive names, which many might be familiar with the Permanent Commission on the Status of Indigenous and Tribal. Yeah, racial, indigenous, and tribal populations. They have a subcommittee around place justice, and it's all around like this, the naming of places and making sure that whoever's being named is the right name. Don't have something, this goes back with 1970, name with the N-word past work. It's just kind of continuing that line of thought. So there will be a bill about that. And there's been a lot of work, and I know that Ambassador Crofton McDonald sits on that. There's also going to continue the conversation about what tribal membership looks like within the Baxter State Park Authority or Advisory Committee, or so on and so forth. And I know that Ambassador Brian from the Penobscot Nation has had a few conversations with the members of Baxter State Park Authority, Attorney General Fry, who's chair of that. There's also going to be a bill looking at creating an economic opportunity for internet gaming, which is like sports gaming, but it will be like poker, slots, whatever, video poker. But you know, you can log into your computer and gamble from there. And there's also legislation that will consider the current teaching of Wabanaki studies in Maine public schools, and to make sure that the original legislation that was drafted by Ronald Loring from, I guess that would have been late 90s, early 2000s, it's actually being taught. So there's a lot of work for that, and actually just kind of understanding in my head right now that you guys have all done a lot of work on that personally. So
Yeah, we've
yeah,
been
you're
part
very
of that.
familiar with that.
That's why it's good to have you here.
And have agreed to take on,
Yeah.
like MITSC would be taking on some new, or picking up old responsibilities.
Yeah. So that you'll be hearing that, and that's going to be partnered with another bill that has to do with the teaching of African American studies as well. So there's kind of a very similar pathway that I'm seeing right now in public schools. That's
So Brian, so the Maine Department of Education is also taking that on, aren't they? They had some sessions this summer reviewing Wabanaki studies and African American studies.
Yeah, I believe they have been doing one of their regular curriculum updates on the history curriculum, and that's been part of it.
And science as well. But it was kind of like a,
You know more about this than I know. But yeah, I am familiar with that. So there's going to be an update that we'll hear from the Department of Education concerning that. I think there'll probably be some good reports that will go well into that and kind of help determine the legislative path for Wabanaki Studies Bill and African American Studies Bill. I haven't heard from DOE yet, though. I don't know if you have. So.
Not recently.
That's kind of, you know, the ballpark of the legislation that is concerning the tribes in some way or another. I know that there's a lot of committees or commissions that have been set up that have included tribal members, and our office and Senator Jackson's office, as well as the governor's office, have all been working with Ambassador Crofton McDonald and Dana, travel representative, Ambassador Brian, and Vice Chief Silly Boy on identifying good tribal members that could fill in whatever those roles are. I know that there's one that we're working on right now for studying rural EMS sustainability funding that would inquire on tribal EMS perspective on sustainable funding.
Thank you so much.
yes,
Okay, thanks.
thank you.
Thank you.
So Paul, we're gonna move on to the, thank you, Brian. We're gonna move on to the update for the MITSC work plan. And hopefully come to an agreement, yes? Or disagree?
I think it, yeah, and discuss if there's anything that needs to be added, right?
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, we're talking project manager right here.
Does
Sorry, I
anyone
didn't
need-
realize. I thought I was talking. I was muted. So forget what I just said.
I already forgot it.
At the July meeting, we circulated a draft update of the work plan. That is still that's the same draft that was recirculated, in the last few days. We had asked the commissioners to be looking at this and be prepared to, act on it today. It's basically, a lot of the same priorities, projects, with sort of updated language on some of them that's already been in the work plan. But the last 4 items I would ask you to particularly look at, 14, 15, 16, and 17. I think that those are the ones that really would be significantly different than, what's already in the work plan, or would be new additions to the work plan. So, for instance, number 14 talks about potential projects and studies. Now, these have been talked about in one way or another, but they haven't really been established as projects for, or items for the work plan or projects for the work plan. So I wanted to call your attention to those. One is the issue of the sharing of criminal history information between the tribes and the state. We had a request from the Attorney General's office to see if we could help facilitate that. That's one of the issues on which I think we really need input from the chiefs and potentially from, the law enforcement people at the tribes, the tribal courts. If the commission wants that to be an issue that we try to move forward on. Another is the which Brian just referenced, the expanded role for the tribes in management of Baxter State Park. As you recall, Bob and Darren had done some research on the issue of, the potential for a tribal role and looking at the Baxter, will and so forth. So that could potentially be a project that you want the commission to include in the work plan and work on, between now and the next legislature, so that the commission would have a position or, at least useful information to contribute to the discussion about expanding the role of the tribes in the management of Baxter Park. Another sort of pending potential project that we've talked about is potentially to do a study on the impact of PFAS specifically on tribal communities and citizens. That would be something that, you've talked about it, but we haven't really identified it as a specific project. Again, another is again, what Brian just referred to is the issue of tribal access to block grant funding. Do you want MITSC to do some research and, prepare some kind of a report, recommendations, to the legislature and the tribes regarding that issue? And the last potential one would be on the issue of the return of state lands to the tribes, which of course has been an issue that's been embodied in a couple of different pieces of legislation, but not acted on. Do you want MITSC to do some kind of research report, state a position on the issue of returning state lands to the tribes? So those 5, I think it's 5, are all potential issues, projects that could or, be added to the work plan if you want to do that. And I can stop there and let you discuss that, or I could move on to the other three, and then it's up to you. But
I would continue on. Paul will just talk about
okay.
what
Now,
comes up at the end.
Number 15 is MITSC internships. MITSC could try to develop a program for paid internships. We've had, during my time at MITSC, we had one summer when we had a paid law school student as an intern. It was extremely helpful to the commission to have that. I'd like to see some Wabanaki students doing internships with MITSC, but I think it's important that they be paid internships. And I know that Bowdoin has an active program of sponsoring paid internships. I suspect there are some other places we could look for cooperation in developing a paid internship program. I think that would be, I'm sorry that I haven't made that a reality while I've been director, except for the one summer when we did try another summer to have a paid internship, but for various reasons, it just didn't work out. So I think that would be a really good thing for MITSC to try to develop, particularly if we could recruit Wabanaki students and have them get some compensation for doing it. 16 is administrative internal issues for the administrative committee to review and make recommendations to the commission on various pending administrative or internal issues. I think the biggie there would be to take a hard look at the bylaws. It's been a while since MITSC's done a thorough re-examination of the bylaws. You may recall we made some amendments to the bylaws a couple of years ago. But as far as an overall look at the bylaws, it's something we've talked about doing. But I think it would, especially with a new director coming in, because the last time the issue came up about should we take a comprehensive look at the bylaws, and it's when I came in. And I think now with a new director coming in, it would make sense to revisit that possibility of having the admin committee do a real hard look at the overall bylaws. And the last one, 17, periodic review of the work plan. It's just there has been to some degree periodic review, and I think you should just plan on the work plan being reviewed and updated at least annually, and maybe even every 6 months. So those are the things I would suggest you focus on, because they're the 4 things that are really kind of different from what's already in the work plan.
Thanks, Paul. So did anybody have any comments or questions on the summary from Paul?
I'd offer, the comment I would offer is there's a lot on these 2 pages in the work plan. Now, granted, some items are ongoing collaboration, some items are monitor, but some items are big work commitments. And my suggestion is that if the commission feels it's a good idea, which is perfectly normal, to say, well, we think this item that we're not looking at now should be a project, perhaps like some of them at 14. Then I think it would be helpful to relieve the staff of maybe some other things that are on this list that we could set aside or prioritized. In other words, I'm concerned about loading up the staff, and the commission. We should apply some prioritization and say, if this is coming in new, perhaps we can, back off of this one, or this is a priority and we can, for this year, and this can wait till next year, or give the staff some guidance. Because otherwise, this is a tremendous amount of work that's not necessarily being prioritized by the commission. So that's just my recommendation, is that once we decide this ought to be done, we do some culling and some prioritization so that we can help the staff out a little bit with where they put their time and effort.
Amen.
Thank you, Richard. How about on the board? Anybody have comments?
I think Bert does.
Robert?
Yeah, so a thought came across my mind. Let's see, where is it at? We're talking about the MITSC internships. I mean, I like the idea, but how would that work if we picked up something like that? If we started utilizing that. In other words, basically that their pay comes out of our funding, or is it a collaborative between another, organization, or what? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, no, good question, Bert. And what I contemplated here was paid internships that are, funded by, by collaborative entities. The one we did have, the Minnesota Justice Foundation, ponied up the money. We did have to pay some fringe, workers' comp, whatever, but the cost to the commission was pretty minimal compared to the total compensation that was paid to the intern. So that's what I had in mind. I made the reference to the Bowdoin internships. They're paid, by a fund at Bowdoin. So I'm not suggesting that MITSC necessarily take on, the cost out of its own base funding, but that it be something that be done in collaboration with entities that are all, they're already willing to fund internships.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other comments? If I could, to follow up, if it's okay, unless someone else is ready to go, to follow up on what Richard said, I agree. It's, pretty soon it probably won't be my problem, but I think it, potentially is a lot of work. I listed these things because they are things that have been floating around. They've been out there. MITSC's done some things regarding them. But I do think that probably all 5 of those potential projects, it's not feasible for MITSC to take them all on. And I agree with Richard that if you take some of them on, it probably means deprioritizing some other things that are already on, on the work plan. I would also add that there are some things on the work plan that we really can't take off the work plan because we're committed, to doing them, or we've already done so much on them that it wouldn't make sense to abandon them. For instance, all the work we've been doing on the Wabanaki Studies bill. And Wabanaki Studies continues and always has been a major priority for MITSC. So, I mean, I don't think we're going to take that off the work plan, but there may be some other things that, could come off the work plan or be deprioritized, depending on whether you choose to, prioritize some new things. So I would suggest that we just right now take a look at those 5 potential projects or issues and, see if you think we should prioritize them. Yeah, Bert has another comment.
Yeah, so, I'm looking at this work plan and I'm, maybe it's just me, but I'm bouncing, basically trying to figure out, and maybe it would be easier for all of us if it was divided up, basically, this is what's going on right now, that's in play at this moment, and giving us an idea as to, like, is it something that we just need to monitor or literally get in, dive into? And then maybe the next grouping might be something that, we might need to be actually working on consistently. And the other maybe, items that may be of our interest that we may be needing to look at, and then we can kind of figure it out from there. That way, if we already have a grouping that these are already happening and they're going to keep on going, and it's just something that we need to monitor. We don't always have to focus directly on that. The focus would be on stuff that we actually are having to dive into and work on. And then that gives us an opportunity to look at the other things that we may be interested in taking on.
If I could comment, yeah, I think that's a good point, Bert, and I do think that I didn't designate them that way, but the first 9 items on the work plan are really things that kind of we're already committed doing. They're ongoing, and my suggestion would be that you probably wouldn't want to deprioritize any of them. But then when you get down to like 10 and 11, 12, 13, like the Holtercom remediation is something that's out there that MITSC hasn't done yet. Do we prioritize doing that? Wolfton mining, we've monitored it, but MITSC could be more assertive in terms of getting involved in the pending Wolfton mining proposal. The collaboration with the Permanent Commission, we've met with them, we've identified potential areas where we could collaborate, but we haven't actually started, a project there. And repatriation, I carry that over in the work plan because we respond to, when there's an issue and we're asked to get involved, we want to do that. But right now there is no pending request, for us to do anything regarding a repatriation issue. So that's not necessarily something that we would, that we're doing on an ongoing basis. So I think that distinction already exists. Largely the first 9 are one category, and then the next 4, 10 through 13 are really categories that, aren't in, that we're not necessarily already fully committed to doing. So I hope that's responsive to.
Yeah, well, I look at it.
Hold on, Bert.
I was just gonna say, with your blessing, I would be happy to take a shot at just reorganizing this and sending it back out to you all, to try and make it feel more prioritized and digestible. Like we get Paul's feedback too.
Yeah, that would.
I'm happy to.
That would help. But like I said, when I'm looking at it, I said it might just be me, but my attention bounces trying to figure out, the importance level, where it's at, versus something that we're thinking about, or because I see even the Holtrachem and the Wolf Den mining, to me those are very important. That I know we should be monitoring that, but I don't know where that's at. Whether we need to say something about it, because we don't want to be late on the ball game either, on certain things, and those are huge environmental things that are going to affect all of our tribal communities in some way.
Thanks, Bert. So, Richard,
But maybe just to help on the 10, on Holford Chem, for instance, I think you can classify that as monitor. Because really what I'm getting at there is you have the settlement. There's $187 million settlement that is going to fund work that's already in the process. So you could just simply monitor the projects and the stabilization that's going to occur. And that's all that would be just every once in a while, get an update of those, the components of that 187. The way that settlement is set up, if they don't deliver in the long run, there's a commitment of another 80 million that might have to kick in. So I think I see that as just strictly monitoring the process, being aware of it, and rather than participate as a state, because that's kind of already passed. So that eases up that one.
If I may, just focusing on item 14, as a former bureaucrat, I tend to think like this: what can we get other people to do, and what do we have to do because nobody else will do it? And I would make the highest priority of this group of 5 the sharing of criminal history information, because that's one of the few things the state has ever asked us for any kind of cooperation on. And as far as I know, nobody else is taking a whack at it. Whereas, thanks to Brian, we now know that the legislature has something going on with Back to Park Authority and block grant funding. Zeke, if you're still there, I think you had your own views previously on return of state lands. I think the Wabanaki Alliance decided not to press that issue in the legislature, at least the last session. And then PFAS, I'm just guessing here, but I have to assume that there will be other government and non-governmental agencies working on that. Not that it's not a high priority for all of us, but as I look at it, I think the sharing of criminal history information is the one that's least likely to get done if we don't do something about it. For what that's worth.
thank you. So I'd like to say thank you to Rachel. I think that's a great idea too. If you can break that down into a category and priority.
Yes, I think
Kind of
I
the
think
two
I can
together.
really improve on it. I've never thought about restructuring this, but I feel like hearing everyone's input, it could be restructured in a really cool way.
And I think maybe if that happens, then we can bring that back and have another look at it.
That's a serious job, and we have not really been able to make priorities.
I think like Rocky and I could restructure this in a way that it becomes like a really inspiring, guiding document and not overwhelming.
Right. Sound okay?
Yeah, that's what you want us to do. Yep.
And then we'll take another look at it. We'll bring it back.
Yep, we'll, continue with, obviously, we have ongoing projects on here. We're keep working with those and put that together for you for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, so any other comments on that, or? If not,
Move on to B.
B is the C-Run report. Some of that was already addressed by Rachel as part of the staff report, but I guess it's an agenda item for anything else that needs to be said or decided regarding the follow-up on C-Run. And Rachel, do you think we need to do anything else on that at this point?
I can't think of anything. I feel like I already shared everything I would have shared on that subject, so unless someone has questions or additions.
Now, oh, sorry, I'm sorry, just briefly, am I doing the math right that the brochure costs about $25 a piece to produce?
The report?
Yes.
Yeah, about that. It depends on how many you print. but Yeah.
Thank you.
Comments? Anybody else have questions? Did that sound good to you, Joe?
That sounds right. I mean, we're sort of ready to take off any new invitations or initiatives we have that come out of the ones we're doing.
One thing we did discuss that I haven't acted on yet is to try to get a main calling episode about CRM, which I think would be really cool. Get a panel of you all on there. I just think that gets wide coverage. A lot of people.
Anyone else? All right, so you'll keep us updated?
Yes.
Rachel will keep us updated on the C-Run activities and education as well. Item C, that was in the report as well, staff reports. And we did discuss that further. We had a lot of good comments on how to make that all happen. Did anyone else want to address that at this time? Thumbs up, looks good, move on.
Yeah, so the next item is fisheries co-management and MITSC fishing rules update. And I was gonna ask Bob to provide the latest on that.
Sure. I'm going to try not to do this completely from zero because I know most of you are familiar with it, but the genesis for this project was in two parts. One was last summer when I thought, gee, I should go fishing on some of the MITSC waters. And I looked at the brochure and I looked at the state's website and I couldn't figure out which rules applied. So I said, I don't think I'm going to try my luck there. And then last December, as part of the listening tour, we met with Chief Newell, who brought up the topic of co-management. And that was the spark for me. We have not updated our regulations in something like 20 years, maybe longer than that, depending on how you calculate which ones are the effective ones. And when we talked about this in prior years, the problem had always been, well, we don't have the money to go hire biologists and propose our own rules for these so-called boundary waters, which are those waters which are more than a mile on bounding an Indian territory or half a mile. I won't even go through the details, but it's the boundary waters that touch both state and tribal fisheries. I always felt kind of sheepish that we had left that undone because, Bert, as you'll remember, that is one of the things on that long list of items that we're charged with. And it appealed to me because it's so specific. You know, you can really make up a checklist. When Chief Newell mentioned the idea of co-management, that made me think, well, there's the answer to the problem. We don't have to go hire our own biologists. We take the tribal fisheries people and put them together with the state fisheries people and let them do all the work. This is what you learn as a bureaucrat, getting other people to do the work. I passed that. First, we went through the commission. Everybody seemed to like the idea. Ran it through Jerry Reed, who thought it was a great idea. Basically, gave me carte blanche to approach Commissioner Camuso and let him know if there were any problems. We approached Commissioner Camuso, and she designated a couple of senior people in her department, Joe Overlock and Francis Broadagam, who met with me and Paul, I think it was in June. I think I've mentioned before, they were very receptive. They have been asking themselves the same questions I asked when I was looking at the fishing rules, like, do these really match up? They volunteered. The Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Department has always had what they felt was a good working relationship, person to person with the various tribal boards and the state fisheries people, but they hadn't been getting together much lately. They thought it would be a great idea. I think we left it, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong. They wanted, first of all, they warned us that they're very, very busy and it would take some time. They wanted to summarize our meeting and take sort of the next step in how they were going to designate this, whether they wanted to work by region or some other method. And spoiler, one hint they gave us was one thing that appealed to them was they would like to work with the general fishing laws first and then the special laws. Those of you who know how the fishing rules are established in Maine, there are general rules like no use of poisonous and explosive substances. And then there are the specific rules for individual waters, not more than 2 of these or 3 of these, and no live fish is bait, and so on. I think we left it, Paul, that they would get back to us. The loose end that we've left hanging is that we have names from each of the tribal governments except Zibayag. And when I last followed up with Sandy on that, she suggested that I offer a deadline, which I haven't seen fit to do because the state hasn't taken that next step yet. So that's where it stands. I'm thinking of using the next installment of C-Run video, if you don't mind, as a fulcrum to approach them. I don't want to be rude and say, why haven't you guys moved this along? But I would go back and say, this is what we're up to. You get special treatment as a good customer of MITSC. We'll give you a link to the video. And once we hear back from them, I'll be back with you, Sandy, and you will see if we can fill the one vacant spot on our side of the agenda. I'm looking forward to it. I'm anxious. I think it would be good house cleaning, a good example of the collaboration that we've otherwise tried to mandate by statute. And it should be good, clean fun.
May I ask a question?
Please.
Did you connect with Chris Johnson at the Fish Talk?
It's appropriate to speak only with tribal leadership, Rachel.
Okay.
And then it's up to tribal leadership to determine who within the organization would be the person that we would work with.
That makes sense.
And Bob, I think we do need to reconsider a deadline for Zibayag because there's a lot of activity going on as well as some turmoil. And so I think if we don't push just a little bit harder, it's going to continue to get lower on the pile.
I tell you what, why don't I send you a reminder email sometime next week, and then we'll follow up.
Perfect.
Your question was Chris Johnson?
Yeah. Which I take it back.
Thank you, Sandy.
Questions? Comments?
Oh, fantastic.
I think it's a great idea and hopefully things can move along.
One of the interesting aspects of this is, I think, the failure to update boundary waters regulations was a reflection of the tension between state and tribal governments. Nobody wanted to deal with anybody. And yet when the subject came up, I know the tribal governments, yeah, it's a good idea. The governor's office thought it was a good idea. It makes me wonder, what am I missing here? But it's on our list of things we should be doing, and look forward to it.
Great. So any other questions on that? If not, we'll move on to item E.
Well, I guess that's me too. Isn't it?
More.
The short answer is there's nothing happening right now that we need to do. The longer answer is, I read the governor's veto letter of last, whenever that was, now I can't remember. A little bit differently from the way the native members read it. I read it as painting the target. This is what we're missing. This is what I want to see. I took her complaint to be, or her reservations to be, that as to the checkerboard of outlying communities and as to particular issues, there had not been sufficient public discussion of what was at stake. And that seemed to me like a challenge. At the last meeting, whenever that was, people agreed more or less enthusiastically that this would be a good time for MITSC to put on a forum. And I was charged with doing that. First thing I did was contact Corey Hinton, who had already been contacted and invited to the dance, so to speak, by Molly and Dana, who had been contacted by Allison Baye, a professor at Colby, who administers her own bailiwick of governmental and tribal concerns. In any event, we've been talking off and on, Corey, Mullion, and I, whether we've got one forum to deal with or two. I had opened discussions with Dean Lee Softly at the law school, thinking that I'm a lawyer, I think like this, we need lawyers. And there's no question about it, the subject is heavily based in law. She was on vacation. Before I heard back from her, I learned that that Colby was already looking to put on some kind of forum. So it's been left with Dean Softly, let her know how it turns out. I've sent a couple of, I've sent some endless emails and a couple of outlines to Corey and Mullion, suggesting the kinds of things that I would suggest that I think would make good topics for the presentation. And they include basically a reunion of the task force, those legislators and those tribal advocates and representatives who were involved in the task force of, what was it, 2019, to sort of refresh everybody's recollection, and then next panel review everything that has happened since the task force, the sports betting bill and the collaboration bill and so on. You know where I'm going here. The next panel will be on what comes next. And I've suggested we call on people in the worlds of municipal administration, finance, commerce, economics, and taxation, all the kinds of things that most people don't really want to hear much about, except I think they are where the rubber is meeting the road, so to speak, on the overall reform effort. I think people want to hear more about how is that going to work when we've got, by the way, recent news, Elon Musk has been negotiating with the tribes in Connecticut to establish Tesla dealerships there. Because I'm not sure you're aware of this, but all the 50 states in the early age of the automobile era created protective statutes so that so that automobile manufacturers cannot sell at retail anywhere. They must have independent local dealerships. The Tesla people are thinking of legitimately skirting that requirement in Connecticut by coming to terms with the tribes. I think that's a great idea. I think it's a good example of the kinds of monsters under the bed that people seem to be frightened of. In any event, to get to the point, I'm waiting to hear back from Mullion and Corey on whether they want to put on a joint forum or two separate forums. Then I would go back to Dean Softly and let her know what's going on, and I'll keep you posted. Questions? Yes.
The Colby Forum has been scheduled for October 3rd.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think I may have my answer. that would be put on by the Wabanaki Alliance. Or you just, have you been asked to speak?
I'm not speaking. I'm trying to get other people to speak.
Well, you may be hearing from us.
Yeah, I believe that the panels, as you described, are working towards that. I only have a flashlight into, all of the background.
Mark my calendar, October 3rd.
Let us know.
You're speaking.
Oh, I am. We did. Okay. Any comments? Questions?
I don't want to get ahead of any commissioners, but
There's only two here, so.
all right, if there aren't any comments from the commissioners, I just had a couple of things I want to say to follow up on what Bob said. It does sound like the Colby thing is moving ahead and doesn't sound to me like it's going to be what we had in mind. Personally, I think MITSC should move ahead with having an independent forum along the lines that Bob had originally envisioned, bringing in views from various perspectives, and an analysis kind of focused forum rather than an advocacy forum. I just want to point out one thing about the in my view, I've said this many times over the years, in terms of the issues that are the sticking points. It seems like politically we hear a lot about checkerboarded lands, the scattered lands. But if you look at the court disputes that have occurred since the settlement, most of them have been about civil regulatory jurisdiction on the reservations. They haven't been about the scattered lands. So I think the focus on the scattered lands may be a misdirection. Certainly, it doesn't take into account the fact that most of the major legal disputes have actually centered on civil jurisdiction on the reservations. And I think that's an issue. If MITSC is going to have an independent forum, I think that should be explored, because just talking about the scattered lands is not getting at all at the issue of why the state feels that it has to hold on to civil regulatory jurisdiction on the historic reservations. So
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
I just want to add too, like, I mean, if we go ahead, and I know I've been, a little bit out of email range at times recently. Just I'm happy to coordinate at UMaine or even with the law school. If we want to host something, it wouldn't be that big of a lift. Just let me know if and we can help coordinate and probably dedicate a little coordination time as well.
Thank you. You're speaking.
Yeah, I'm here. Just living the West Coast lifestyle is just really mellow today.
Thanks, Aaron.
That West Coast lifestyle, that's kind of hard to get away from, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So just trying to take away from the staff standpoint, where do we stand with this? Bob, you thinking
I'll be back with Corey and Mullion and see whether they want to invite us into the October 3rd forum, or if not, what ground they're already covering. And in any event, whether Corey can make it to a second one, because you almost can't have a good forum on this without it.
So I think find out who's putting on the October 3rd.
The Goldfarb Institute, which is a policy, and
I think the Wabanaki Alliance.
Oh, okay. So Corey may be involved. Yeah, let us know.
Okay, I would just reiterate that I think MITSC should, in light of what's up, what we've learned, MITSC should run an independent forum. That's my view.
Sure to do it before you retire.
You're up, Darren, so on that, on your comment. Right?
Right.
What was that? Sorry.
Paul wants to go ahead with an independent forum for MITSC.
Yeah.
So we probably should think about a venue and date and time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We can coordinate that.
Yep. Bob
We'll be in touch.
will be in touch. All good? What's next?
The next item is F. Am I right? No, where am I?
Yeah. Yep.
Are we at F?
Yes,
um,
pending legislation.
Planning a MITSC process to review pending legislative proposals. So, in the past, MITSC has reacted from time to time to the various proposals that have come up. We already know what some of the carried over bills are going to be. So we're in the position this year of not having to guess what's going to be on the legislative agenda. Of course, there may be new ones, but we already know some of the things that are going to be on there, especially the big bill, the omnibus bill. I guess it's still, the exact language of that, hasn't been settled on, but presumably it's going to look a lot like the prior omnibus bills, I would say. And I just think that MITSC should at this point be thinking about it, talking about how to structure whatever process is going to occur within MITSC to formulate hopefully consensus. That would be ideal if MITSC could develop consensus regarding the recommendations from the task force. The forum, we had, I think Bob and I were thinking of the forum as being part of that. But I think MITSC also needs to, within itself, have a process to prepare for the legislative session. How is that going to work? Because we have found, repeatedly that because of MITSC only meeting periodically, it's difficult and sometimes impossible for MITSC to respond in a timely way, during the legislative session. So I think we need to be thinking ahead of time. When I say we, I mean you, anticipating the legislative session and deciding what process MITSC is going to have in place to be able to participate effectively with respect to the legislative proposals.
Thanks, Paul. So do we still have the legislative committees still meeting? That I'm part of, but I'm not sure.
Lately, it's
Hasn't been disbanded.
Okay.
But I don't, and I think probably the committee members would also agree that in itself is not a sufficient plan because because of the infrequency of MITSC meetings. Bert has got his hand up.
So would you say that, or would you think that maybe during the legislative process, we meet more frequently?
Well, that would be one way to deal with it, would be to do that, or to have a process even before the legislative session on the issues that we know are going to be coming up, and be, formulate the MITSC positions and hopefully consensus on,
Right.
Things.
Right.
But I think Bert did have his hand up.
Yes, go ahead, Bert.
Yeah. So, so with all that said, Paul, do you have an idea of which a process that you're thinking of? And not just for yourself, but also our legislative committee. I can't even remember who's on that, but maybe go through that process and try to just formulate that. That way, we can set something in place for, if we have to come together in an emergency, meeting or whatever to make a decision on that involves that. But for the most part, I think, you've done a pretty good job of keeping track of what, between you, Rachel, and I know Bob, you've been keeping good track on things that are coming up and was just trying to formulate some kind of a plan in case, some action has to be taken quickly.
Well, I mean, I don't have a specific, proposal in terms of how MITSC does this, partly because I'm not gonna be the executive director. But I just think that the commission should be examining, it may be a matter of simply going back to the task force recommendations and, taking a fresh look at, how to realize the benefits that, could come from enactment of the task force recommendations, and to analyze, the issues that have been raised, some of them which I think are red herrings, but it's been a while since MITSC has really done that. The bill didn't, the omnibus bill this past session didn't come to a head. So, MITSC didn't really ever have to address the new version of the omnibus bill, but there's going to be one. And I personally believe that MITSC, rather than just having an up or down vote on a particular bill, would have much more influence on the process if it goes through a process of analyzing the task force recommendations, taking into account the various objections, or as Bob says, monsters under the bed that have been brought up, and be ready to present MITSC's independent view, and why MITSC has come to that. Not just that it's a vote one way or the other on a bill, but it's an articulated, analyzed, assessment of the recommendations from the task force. That's what I would hope to see. But
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks.
So what I'm hearing is that there are, or can be, and probably is, some bills out there that need attention, and maybe some more than others. And I think, I'm not sure what the time frame is for us to come together. Is it 7 business days or 10 business days to call a meeting?
Yeah, it's a week.
A week.
notice and a little.
But we could do something like that, and that if there was something out there that was, looming, I guess.
I had
I don't know about red herrings, but red flags anyway. And then we do have Brian here with us as well, who could keep us up to date, maybe from the state side, what's happening. And Richard,
No, I'm just.
oh, you have a question?
We'll have a comment when you're done.
Yeah,
I have a
I think
comment?
Rachel's first,
Well,
but so I think we could come up with a process where we could say, things are coming in, we need to have a meeting where we need to call the legislative committee at least to sit down and look at those and prioritize maybe what they think is highly important, send that out to the rest of the commission, and then the commission could say, yeah, we need to get together on this, call a meeting, et cetera. But you had a comment.
well, I was just wondering, would it be possible to set aside additional meeting time that's like working meetings just addressing this subject, where we don't need a quorum, but like as many commissioners as possible could show up to roll up their sleeves and really get into the weeds.
So put everybody on the legislative committee.
Yeah, but everybody that could show up, but not have the quorum make or break it, and then that group ultimately recommends,
Yeah.
we have our full meeting.
I guess I did that in 2 steps, yes.
And then I even had the idea, like, what about even just once, because I think it was so interesting hiring Craig Freshly to who works yeah, that whole political cafe thing, I would just be, and he's expressed interest in MITSC, it would be interesting to work with him maybe as a facilitator for like really going into the weeds. And seeing what we, those are
Awesome.
my thoughts.
Thank you. Richard,
Setting aside the omnibus bill, because that's well on its way to have the type of work that Paul just described and that type of report. But stepping back in general in terms of the process of deciding what bills to weigh in on and what bills not to weigh in on. I think we need a checklist, or we need something. And my suggestion would be review the enabling legislation, review the MITSC bylaws, and review past precedent of MITSC involvement in particular issues. And just set up just a list of triggers from those three sources that would help guide the committee as to whether or not a legislative proposal that might come forward can pass that threshold. Because I think now the way it works, if there's the proposal lands on the desk from an advocate or from whatever interested party, and we have to react to it. I think if we could just establish, based on something, sort of like our constitutional provision as an entity, does this meet the test? And if it does, then the committee weighs in and it goes through the whole process and all that. But I think you need some type of a filtering
litmus test.
Process or mechanism, so that you can have you can feel as though you've satisfied that. And this is for future unknown proposals.
Yeah.
In terms of the question of what's the process. So that would be one suggestion.
Drop them in the filter and see if they come out. And that could be on our check away list.
I've got the first one, review the enabling
So the
legislation.
enabling legislation, our bylaws, and essentially MITSC precedent.
A rubric, yeah, checklist or check away list. Are you gonna write that up, Paul?
Oh, I just making my own notes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I like that idea. It provides a structure that the commission really hasn't had to approach this. So.
Yep. Thank you, Richard.
The precedent can be pretty wide ranging, I'll say. Over the years, MITSC has weighed in on including in legislative testimony on a very wide range of issues.
Yeah.
Well, that's why you have all three.
Right.
And,
But it'll be a good start. And then that could drop it into our purview after those.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Any other comments, questions, suggestions? Ruby. That's still a word?
Next item.
Yeah,
It is out here.
LD 78, what's that? Yeah.
It's still a word out here.
Yeah, the referendum,
LD
Brian,
78.
did Brian mention that at all? And if not, I was hoping he might weigh in on that a little.
Please, okay.
Referendum on LD 78, this is question 6 on this coming November's general election ballot.
6 of, I think there's 8 total questions. So definitely a crowded November ballot.
Wow, okay.
But essentially, the bill language that was passed out of the legislature with 2/3 support in both the House and the Senate did not need a governor approval since it's a referendum. It goes straight to public. As long as it gets funded off the appropriations table to make sure that, if they do need a second ballot, that would get funded, but that was a need determined by the Secretary of State. But the language on the question, I think, is pretty much, do you favor printing all sections of the main Constitution?
So
it's
not that in particular one, just in a general sense.
Yes, because I believe there are 3 sections, and I mean the expert sitting to my right that are not printed. One pertaining,
Yeah, I can't remember the other two. There are 2 small ones that don't make much difference. But the one big section is the whole articles of separation between Massachusetts and Maine from 1820, when Maine became a state. And it includes the language, obviously, on Maine's responsibilities and duties to tribes. And, I mean, the report is on the MITSC website about the legal meeting. I think that in a referendum, it's more a question of the public education value of any discussion leading up to the referendum. Why were these sections removed, or say?
Subject for main calling.
Yeah, I mean, it would be. It's a good, that's a good subject.
Because people don't know about it, for one thing, and then, so they're gonna be asked to vote on a referendum that when they walk into the booth in November, it's the first time they're ever gonna look at that question. Why isn't the Constitution printed, or why are they doing it now, and why is it on the ballot?
if I could help illuminate some of that, I think there was a recent University of New Hampshire poll that was put out in the public, and it talked about, are you planning on, voting in this coming November election? I think it was some unheard of number of 81% of the respondents said they're planning on voting. That's more than we usually get for, the even year elections. So that aside, one thing they did ask was, how much do you know about each of these questions? And, they read through them all. People are pretty familiar with the whole public power thing, and somewhat familiar with the foreign spending ban on public referendum. But when it got to question 6 about printing the Constitution, it's pretty low. I think it was single digits or low double digits for how many people actually know what this is about.
Right. We haven't had any TV ads.
No. Yeah, so I mean, I think there definitely would be some public service to, not taking a side or anything like that, but just education.
Education, yeah, definitely. I think that's, and I don't know about TV. I don't even have a TV.
No, I commented that the other
You
two
live
subjects,
stream.
the public power and foreign funding have, or at least public power has already had a lot of airtime. That's what's there.
Can I
I watch yesterday's news each day.
Got a different.
can I make a comment on this item?
Yes. Paul.
I think, well, it's there basically to determine what if anything the commission wants to do between now and the referendum to review. I mean, MITSC's basically done 2 things regarding this Article 10 issue. One was the study that that Judd worked on, which was more of just an objective historic study about how it happened. But MITSC testimony was provided by Darren in support of LD 78. So MITSC is already, on record as supporting it. The question I wanted you to think about now is, do you want MITSC to play an active role with respect to the referendum? Yeah. Bert's up.
Oh, sorry.
So the answer to your question, Paul, yes. I think that, and I think, was it Rachel that you mentioned, or no, it was Newell who mentioned something about Maine calling. I think that's also a great idea. And maybe on Maine calling, have someone from the commission involved in that. So that way, get that information out there, and it is an educational idea, or I think that's important because as it was stated, one of the biggest problems is people don't know. People don't have a clue. I know traveling throughout the state of Maine in different communities, a lot of people didn't understand. They didn't even know that existed, and they didn't know why some of the issues that we are haunted by exist today. And some sadly enough, for a long time, there was a lot of parts of Maine that didn't even realize there were Native communities in the state. So education, I think, and if it's doing something like on Maine calling or whatever, maybe even an op-ed, that we can reach out to educate the public of an issue that's been haunting, the Native population in our state.
Go ahead.
I just had some thoughts, and see how you all feel about them, but I'm thinking we could do something on our website trying to educate about this subject. And I also wanted to pull together materials that I could be distributing at Common Ground, for example. So maybe, Judd, you could even help write a boiled down, like, single page educational description of this issue and what's going on, and we can be passing that out as chairs and talking about it. And then maybe we even want to do, Rocky and I could do a brief video with like an interview with you, Judd.
I was just going to suggest
And then
that.
release that as well. So those are my thoughts if you all want me to move forward.
The one thing is that it doesn't change the responsibility, right?
No,
To the Constitution.
there's no substantive change legally. Any rights or responsibilities or obligations that were there before the language was redacted remain, and will remain exactly as they are after the language is put back. But it was just occurring to me that one sore subject that MITSC has looked at is the Wabanaki education piece in the schools. This is another sort of Wabanaki education piece. This is the history. This is Maine's history. This, when Maine was formed, this was a part of what Maine's obligations were. So I think it's a really important educational issue.
And there must have been some reason for redacting the print.
The reason seemed to have been relatively inane, because by 1876, I don't think honestly, the state government thought they had to deal with Indian tribes any more than just have the Indian agents out there. It was not a big issue, but it is an issue now. And it was back in 1820.
And we're still here.
And the same things continue. In fact, no matter what settlement act there is, what decisions there are by federal or state courts, what action the federal government might take, nothing can change the Maine Constitution and what was written in terms of the responsibilities and obligations, unless there is both an amendment to the Maine Constitution and agreement with the Maine and Massachusetts legislators to make that change. Massachusetts kept a veto on us keeping that language essentially in the Constitution, even if it's not in written. Printed copies.
Printed copies, yeah.
Here's my technical confusion. That's still, which is embarrassing to admit. I keep hearing the reference that removed, redacted from the written version.
Yes.
Which implies that it remains in the body of.
It remains in the body
So
of.
if it's in the body of, but I'm still confused about having the requirement that it takes a constitutional amendment, which is essentially what this vote is on the ballot, to have it appear in the written document, and why a statute wasn't sufficient.
Here's the reason. First of all, it's right. It was always in the concept of the Constitution, whether it was in written copies or not, this material. But it was, the redaction was done by constitutional amendment. There was a constitutional amendment that says you can't, you won't print sections 1, 2, and 5 ahead of your second.
All right, so that's the
1,
only
2,
way
and
down.
5.
Right, so that's the only way back. And the reason they did sort of constitutional amendment and just redacted the language, didn't take anything out, because they'd have to get Massachusetts to agree to take the section 5 language out, which was really vulgar.
Thank you, Professor.
This is fascinating stuff. I mean, I may be a wonk on this kind of stuff, but it really is very interesting.
So are you in agreement with working with Rachel and?
Absolutely. I think this is important stuff to get out there, and a really good basis to start more conversations about what is the relationship between the state and the Wabanaki nations? What was it? How did it evolve?
I know we're about 60 days out, right?
Well,
Thank you.
30 days with early voting.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll get to do that.
And it's significant.
Yes.
Numbers.
All right,
Anything else? Sounds like a plan.
okay. That's the end of old business.
In new business, we're gonna have a A- in there as well.
What was the A-?
Talking
Oh,
about November's,
The meeting, yeah.
date.
So, shall we go with that?
Yes, please.
November meeting is currently set for Friday, November 10th, but without a physical location. So what do you want to do?
Well, I mentioned just as we broke from that is gonna be a holiday, is that correct?
Is it Veterans Day?
It's when Veterans Day is observed, yeah.
It's yeah, because it's not the
But
11th,
technically, it's not Veterans Day,
right? Right,
It will be a federal holiday though, right?
but it'll be easier for people like me who don't have PTO to be able to get to a meeting.
well, that's a good point.
Point. I was just pointing it out. I'm not saying don't do it or do it. I'm just. Others may have plans.
Well, yeah, folks may have Veterans Day obligations, or maybe they're doing them on the 11th, I don't know. Any
Also-
reaction?
Could be a chance to maybe decide to go north, because we've been talking about doing a meeting at Halton Band tribal offices, which are closed on Fridays, which has been part of the struggle of scheduling there. So just to consider, if we decided we couldn't do it that Friday, I wanted to do it that Thursday, it might be a good one to then try to coordinate. Zeke or Sam, feel free to jump in.
Hey everyone. I still think it'd work to have a meeting in the tribal offices on a Friday, even though it's closed. It'd actually be somewhat convenient because we'd have the space. But
Yeah, the building would be empty.
Do you feel like there would be I think part of the motivation for wanting to go north and be there is to be part of the broader community though, and like interface with folks in the tribal office, so. Yeah, so I guess the question would be, is it worth the trip north if we don't have as many opportunities to do that? Or do you think people would show up for a MITSC meeting on their day off?
No, I don't think people would show up. Um,
Yeah, I
But
agree.
people don't show up now and we have live streams, so it's horribly underattended anyway.
Well, we don't know who's listening on the live stream, but.
We have
yeah,
people here today.
The idea of holding it on a Thursday or a different day of the week, that sounds like a possible solution to me.
Okay.
I unfortunately can only meet on Fridays. My work schedule is such that I don't have that time. So just putting that out there. Hopefully there'll be state commissioners that come on so I don't have to feel obligated. So just putting that out there.
Yeah, sounds important for now to keep it to Fridays then.
And I may be in South Dakota.
On that Friday.
Kyle and Pine Ridge. Kyle and Pine Ridge.
So do we want to agree to try and reschedule that meeting for a different?
I'm not
Friday?
saying that. I may be able to attend also. but
Yeah.
I would be remote.
If I can make a comment, just maybe is relevant to this. Are you commissioners thinking you're going to need a meeting to finalize the decision on the hiring of the new executive director? And should that be part of the consideration about when to have another meeting?
What do our bylaws say about the process?
They don't.
Bert has his hand up. Oh,
I think, I think that, we have an executive session coming up, and I guess, we will probably figure out from there whether or not we're gonna need to establish another time. But I think, we'll have to wait till after that executive session is done to figure that out.
Okay. So we could leave it that it may be contingent on that, and that Rachel and I can follow up with communication to the commissioners about the need to we're not changing it as of now, as I understand it. We have a meeting scheduled November 10th as things stand. Is that right?
yes.
Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay, but we can follow up after the executive session to see if that affects it, to whether we just reconfirm that it's November 10th, or we communicate with commissioners about finding another time and setting a place.
No.
Yes,
And can we suggest that if we do change the date, that for purposes of anybody listening on the live stream today, the date will be accurately posted on our website?
oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay,
It's sounding like we maybe don't need to change the date. We've had it for a while. So if you think you can call in, then we should be good with that date. We just still need to determine where it's going to be.
anything else?
No.
Okay, well then, the other item on planning on the new business other than executive session is planning for staff transition, which honestly I thought we had to put on there for whatever conversation you want to have about it. we don't know yet what, like a start date would be for new director. But it certainly appears that that's going to be happening, and I just thought that it would be good to bring this up so that you all can address any, anything you want to regarding how to organize this, staff transition. I had mentioned that JDK was very helpful to me when I came on. I'm willing to sort of play the same role if you want me to do that. And I guess also, I think Rachel, I don't know if you want me to mention, but Rachel is going to Scotland. So what are your dates, Rachel?
October 5th through the 22nd.
Right. So I'm thinking it would not be ideal to have a new director starting when Rachel's hiking in the back, country of Scotland.
So Paul, I think you would be needed to stay on in whatever capacity that you could, be it part-time or what have you for the transitional period. And as far as like starting that transitional period, I agree that, probably after Rachel's return, we can't function without her. That both of those pieces would be very helpful to any new ED coming into the MITSC. I think anybody else?
Bert's waving with both hands.
Robert.
That's that topic is all fine. And I think we can speak very generally in regard to that. However, I think that it'd be more appropriate when we get into details on that planning. It'd be in executive session.
Thank you.
Okay, and if there aren't any other comments, I think we've completed the agenda other than executive session and adjournment.
Yep. Yeah, we can't adjourn until after executive session.
Yeah, what we've done in the past, when going to executive session, we've let the folks on the live stream know that we have to shut down the live stream, and we're not going to bring it back just to have a
Oh,
motion.
I see.
Yeah, so.
We won't bring it back to announce that we're going to be done. Yes, and without, if there's no objection, we will move into executive session.
I'll make that motion.
Now, if there's any objections, let me know. We're not going to vote on it.
So you probably should have a motion to go
I
into.
was gonna say, in Robert's Rules of Order, which I believe we sort of kind of sideways follow, it's one of those things that does require a motion.
I make that motion to go in executive session.
A second. After a 5-minute break, because Bert, I've seen your hand go up 3 times, and I'm in the sign of a T.
Yeah, well, it's kind of hard. What would this one be?
So was there a vote on the motion or a consensus?
Everybody.
By acclamation.
Okay,
So anyway.
all right. So is Newell